So one thing I will say about people who work the night shift, they are definitely a different breed, right? Because I know people who work like day shift who are like, I could never work night shift. And like literally the people who I work with on night shift are like, yeah, I could never work days. Like, you have some people who are on night shift who have only ever worked night shift, but I even have some coworkers who at one point worked days and they were like, never again. One benefit that I will say to the night shift is that you don't have management there. It's not as like top heavy at night. All the management is gone. So it's not as much like, I don't want to say like pressure, like there's not so many people always lurking over your shoulder. One thing I do like about night shift is that because there's not always management there for you to like lean on, you kind of have the freedom to like think outside the box and to like think on your feet and come up with your own solutions. But one thing I will say about people who work the night shift, because they generally like the night shift, they are definitely a different breed. Like the conversations and the topics that we have literally range from 0 to 100. So I will say, the topics of discussion that we had this past weekend was one of my male coworkers was asking how did people feel about the I don't even know if it's a real law. I've seen it on YouTube. I've seen like people talk about it. I don't know if it's a real law that's going into effect, or if it's just something that people say should be a real law. Don't really know. But it was about the mandatory paternity test, which, to each his own. Personally, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing for multiple reasons. Like, so of course, well, I'm not going to say of course, because I'm not going to, assume that because of someone's gender, they had a specific standpoint. But this particular person, I'll say, had the particular standpoint of he's in favor of it because there are too many women who are trapping men with children that aren't even theirs. There are too many, women that are, 18-wheeler. There are too many women that are like stringing men through the child support system, taking care of kids that aren't even theirs. So that's why he was in favor of it. And surprisingly so. So, of course, on YouTube, and it's so like stupid because when people go on YouTube and when they make videos where they're talking about, particular topics, it's like they always want to interview people specifically who have the opposing view. And it's like, you do that, why? Just so you can sit here and pinpoint and say why, you think it's a good thing. Like, you can do that and you can talk about the pros of something without necessarily having to specifically interview someone who's against it, just so you can tear them down as a part of you winning the argument. But that's just, my particular thoughts. But anyways, like, surprisingly, like, almost everybody of both genders was in favor of it. And like, the thing that I say is like, so, it was funny to me was because one particular woman was like, well, she was in favor of it too. And she was like, I know too many women who, waste so much time, going through the child support system, trying to chase down these men to get paternity tests for these children that they know are theirs. And can I just say this, to the men that are put on child support and find out years later that the baby is not theirs, or to the men who find out years later the baby aren't theirs and they're not on child support, to you men, I really feel sorry for you, because you were stepping up and taking care of business without having to be told to. To the men that are on child support that are taking care of kids that are not theirs, 9 times out of 10, or I would say like 8 times out of 10, but really I want to say 9. The process of what happens is that the courts will, go after these men. They'll schedule them for a paternity test, because through the child support court, you actually are supposed to take a paternity test. And this happens more times than not. The men will run from the paternity. I mean, if you've ever even watched an episode of Paternity Court, which I'm sure most men don't, they don't sit around watching that kind of stuff. But these men will run from the paternity test. They will not show up. And child support does not give a 3 strikes. It's a 2 strikes and you're out. So they'll set up a paternity test. If you fail to show up, they will reschedule the paternity test. If you fail to show up the second time, they will name you the father by default. Is that right? No. I don't know who came up with that system. Personally, me, and I know people are not going to agree, I feel like, there should be like some sort of like punitive action, instead of like a financial one. It should be like, okay, if we schedule you one and you miss it, and we schedule you a second one and you miss it, put a warrant out for their arrest, get them arrested, and then once they're arrested, then force them to do the DNA test while they're incarcerated. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, wow, like really? But I mean, seriously, would you rather be forced to take the paternity test, or would you rather be put on child support only to find out years later that at this point you've spent thousands of dollars on a child that's not yours, that could have been avoided if not you had not been the one running from the paternity test? And it's so stupid because the majority of men that run from the paternity test, when they ask them why they ran, they're like, because I knew the baby wasn't mine. Okay, well, hey, sir, if you knew the baby wasn't yours, then it would have been who of you to take the freaking test. And you could have cleared this up years ago. But nevertheless, one woman said that she was in support of it because then it'll keep women from having to chase these men down to make them take a paternity test. If the paternity test is mandatory, it's going to be mandatory for both parties involved. So it'll keep women, and it'll keep the courts from having to chase these men down in order to get this done. And so another woman follows up by saying, yeah, and she was like, then you don't have to wait years to get your child support. If we can force these men to take paternity tests at birth, then you can, get his, ASS on the hook for child support from day one, and you can be absolutely positive that you got the right guy on the hook. So you don't have to waste your time hearing, I don't even know if this child is mine, because we know from day one the child is ours. So, of course, like, a couple people chuckled at that, but like, one of the guys got like really upset about that. He was like super offended by that. And he was like, see, that's the issue now. Everyone just wants to run to child support. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, you can't have it both ways. Like, if we're going to do a mandatory paternity test system, then you have to know that there are going to be some benefits to both parties that the other party is not going to be in favor of. So you have to know that if you want a mandatory DNA test system so that you know from day one that this child is yours, then that also means that from day one, you are both emotionally, physically, and financially responsible. Because from the day that you find out that this child is yours, you are now just as liable as the mother to be financially responsible for this child. And like, in case you haven't seen, the price of formula nowadays is like $30 a can. It's ridiculous. I don't even know who's having kids in this economy, but kids are a blessing, so have at it. But children are expensive. So I don't see how you can sit here and get all defensive and be like, yeah, paternity tests are a good thing. So we need to, keep these women from trapping these men and keep these women from killing these men with child support. And then when someone mentions, hey, sir, getting the paternity test at birth is not going to stop child support. If anything, it's just going to make sure that the right person is on hook, and it's just going to force them to have to pay from day one. So the child support system is still going to be 100% in play. And the hardest part about the child support system is locating and determining the father. Once you do that, the hard work is done. Now all we have to do is collect. So she was like, if we do paternity tests at birth, that means we've done all of the hard work of locating the father. All we have to do from here until 18 is collect. So you can't get mad at the opposite, right? You state your point of view, somebody agrees with your point of view, but their reasoning for why they agree with your point of view goes against your reasoning for agreeing for why you agree with this point of view, and now you're still mad. Like, this person is basically saying, hey, I agree with you. Paternity test at birth is a good thing. I agree with you. But because you dislike their reason for why they agree, you're still mad. Like, who does that? You know what I mean? And so, like, Spirit was like, and I just told them, I said, in life, you got to take the good with the bad. Like, this is going to be a real short, sweet, and to the point. But, like, you have to take the good with the bad. You know what I mean? You have to know that there are going to be people, and I'm not saying that either or is wrong. Personally, I think both are correct in their own, respective purposes, whatever, for their own respective reasons. I actually think both points of view are right and accurate. But you have to know that, like, in anything that gets put in play can be spun either way. You know what I mean? So you can't get mad and be like, oh, well, if we do this, it'll end child support, so that's why I'm in favor of it. When what you don't realize is that if these people put this rule into play, it's not going to stop child support. It's going to save child support a lot of time and effort, because it's going to cut their work in half. It's going to take care of the hardest part of their job, which is locating the biological father. That's what it's going to do. It's going to help them. So when you think that, like, the government is putting these things into play to help you, and you're like, oh yeah, finally they're on our side. Like, you have to really think about why these things are happening. Like, the government is for the government, point blank and period. The government is for the government. The government's not for the people. Government has really never been for the people. It's for them. I mean, if the government was really for the people, inflation wouldn't be out of control like it is now. I think I went to Subway the other day. I remember when they first came out with, like, the $5 footlong. This was like years ago, but, and I know, like, it hasn't been $5 for like a while. I mean, they might have some days where you could go and get like a special. Well, it'd be like certain ones you can get. But I remember I went to Subway like maybe last year and or maybe in the year before, because I think inflation started really getting out of control last year, and the year before last, I'm sorry, and then just spiraled last year, and now it's utterly ridiculous. But let's say, like, back in 2022, I went to Subway, got a footlong meal, you know what I mean, with the sandwich, the chips, and the drink, and it was like $9 and some change, which is like not horrible. I mean, like, you think about it, I'm like really spending $9 for someone to make me a sandwich, but at the same time, like, it wasn't horrible. I went to Subway the other day and got a footlong and chips and a drink, and it ended up being, after taxes, like $20. And I was like, really? Like, I was so tempted to be like, y'all can keep that. But at that point, like, I had already had them make it. And once you have them make it, they can't do anything except for throw it away. So, like, I, advise people, when you go somewhere, if you haven't been out for a while, if you're like me and you're the type where you're trying to eat more at home and you haven't been out in a while, like, you might want to ask about the prices before you just get to ordering and stuff, because the prices of things have just gotten ridiculous. I mean, what am I paying $20 for? Because it's not like the sandwiches are coming with more food now. So what am I paying $20 for? But either way, like, that's just my long way of saying, like, the government is not for the people. If they were, they would have put caps on inflation. They would have been giving us more stimulus checks instead of sending millions and billions of dollars to aid, refugees overseas. Meanwhile, our own people in our own country are, like, drowning, barely keeping our head above water. Right? We're like barely keeping our head above water, but you're sending millions of dollars overseas. Meanwhile, people are like, at that time, we're like, hey, can we get another stimulus? You know what I mean? Like, the government has never been for the people. So when you see government implementing these rules and these things like this, just know that there's ulterior motives behind it. Sorry to bust your bubble, but that's just kind of like the way it is. But anyways, like, I just felt the need to tell this person, and it may have like not even been my place, but I just felt the need to tell this person, like, yeah, you have to take the good with the bad. You have to know that like everybody has their own ulterior motive for doing something. You know what I mean? Whether that something is in your favor or against you, everybody has their own ulterior motive. And when I say ulterior motive, like I don't even know if that implies that it's negative, but it doesn't even necessarily have to be. Like, you know, it goes along with the message that Spirit gave me when it was like, sometimes, you know, it's miscommunications and it's misunderstandings that are causing like these hiccups and stuff. And I said, you know, you'd be surprised. Like when I talk to my friend who has like the twins, or it's not really my friend or whatever, but when I talk to the person who has the twins, like things that she did that I don't agree with, which is why I had to like cut the friendship, because I was like, okay, like you're definitely doing way too much at this point, and I don't agree with that. I don't agree with this person that you're turning into. But I'm like, if you ever were to talk, like have you ever just sat down and spoken and heard the other person's point of view? Because when her and her child's father went to court, and when you hear someone tell their side and tell like what they're going through, it really opens your eyes to be like, okay, well, although I don't agree with what you did, I understand why you did it, right? And that's why I'm saying, like, so many things happen with miscommunication through text messages, even through like conversation. So when you're sitting down and you're talking to someone, people really have to learn how to listen. Like, not have a conversation, not listen to respond, but like listen to understand. People really have to learn how to listen, because it's so, I feel like, because I'm a woman, and because when I, you know, friends and family members who are women, and you're so used to hearing things from a woman's perspective that you tend to sympathize with that more. But I remember the first time I had a coworker that was male, that was on child support. This was like years ago. And when he talked about like how it was really like destroying his life, when he was like, yeah, when they come in and they say they're going to take a percentage, they don't take like a percentage. And it depends on the state. Some states do take a percentage after taxes. Some states are like, no, we want a percentage of the whole piece, even though we know you're not getting paid this full amount because taxes is about to take, you know, a certain percentage of your check already. So like, depending on how much you make, he's like, yeah, I got taxes coming in, taking like 22%. I got state taxes coming in, taking another 23%. That's like 25%. He was like, then I got child support coming in saying, oh, you have 2 kids by this woman. She deserves 25% of your check. So he's like, between taxes and child support, 50% of my check is gone. And he is like, you know, I don't think that like people really understand that. Or he was like, I don't know if they don't understand or they just don't care. But he was like, yeah, after taxes and child support, 50% of my check is gone. So he was like, imagine, you know, you have your paychecks and you get paid every 2 weeks. He was like, imagine trying to live your whole life on only one of those paychecks, because the other one, it has completely been taken. So he was like, and then on top of that, don't forget, you still got rent, you still got, you know, your car. Hopefully you have one that's paid off, but even if it is, guess what? You still have car insurance. You got health insurance. Hopefully it's provided by your job at a reasonable amount. He was like, but because he's on child support, he also has to provide insurance for the children. He said if he was only paying insurance for himself, it would be something like 30 for medical, like maybe 5 for vision, and like 15 or something for dental. I know he said it would be like less than like $60 or around like $60 if he was getting medical only for himself. But he's like, you know, when you have children and you have to do medical for a family, he was like, I said, you can either do the medical plus one, but if you have multiple kids, you have to do medical for the family. And he's like, so, you know, medical benefits go from being, you know, $60 for one person to now we're talking about like $200-300 per month that I'm paying for medical benefits. And he's like, so that's being taken out of my check. He's like, so now I'm having to try to balance my life with what's left, and it's difficult. And I was like, you know, I never really thought about it like that. I never really, you know, I never sat down and did the calculations, you know, I mean, not to sound like ridiculous or selfish, because it does not affect me. So I never thought to like sit down and do the calculations, but I'm like, I said, I don't know what the situation was. I don't know. And I guess that's also why they say it's cheaper to keep her. It is cheaper to keep her, especially when you've knocked her up. But, that's why I tell people, like, sit down, especially when there are children involved. Try sitting down. And I'm not so ignorant to know that some people just cannot be reasoned with. I'm not too ignorant to know that some people, no matter how hard you try, they're going to intentionally try to hurt you. It's the reason why I stopped being friends with the person. I don't even like to call this person a friend anymore, because I don't even want that energy of saying friend, because I started to see by this person's actions and by what this person was doing, that they weren't doing this because they wanted to get the most and they wanted to benefit their child. They were literally doing this because they wanted to hurt the other parent. So I'm like, I can't call you a friend, and I can't call you someone who I want in my life when I see that's how you operate. You know what I mean? Just because you have a dislike for this person, you're choosing to actively try to hurt them. Because if you would do that to them, then what are you going to do to me, when you decide that you no longer like me or I'm no longer of benefit to you? There was even one video on YouTube where this guy put this man out of his car because the man was complaining, like, if my child's mother is gonna be dating that guy, then he can take care of them kids. Why is she asking me for money for something when she has a whole boyfriend? Let him take care of them kids. And the guy was like, no, like, you sound like a which would it be? He was like, those are your kids. It don't matter who she's dating. Y'all had them kids together. That's y'all's responsibility. You can't just say that because she's dating someone else that all of a sudden these kids are no longer your responsibility. That's not how life works, sir. And I feel the same way, like, being a female with females. Like, I can't be friends with someone who operates like that. But it just really goes to, like, kind of add to the message that I already recorded the other day. Like, it would miscommunication. I want to say, like, and this is just me making up numbers off the top of my head, no statistics, no nothing, but I feel like miscommunication is like the driving factor in like 75% of conflicts. The other 25, I'll just say, are people who are just genuinely evil and you cannot work with them. But I'm gonna say like 75% of conflicts are really just like a miscommunication, because people are not listening to understand. People are not seeing eye to eye. Everyone is only focused about how they're being affected and not how we can come together and work together in a way where everybody can benefit, right? So like this year, and this is like also spirit talking to me, this year is like really going to be about being more open, being more understanding. And I'm just hearing, like, if anyone that from your past or anyone that you have to deal with, for whatever reason, maybe you guys work together and there's someone at your job, so you have to deal with them. Maybe y'all have kids together. Maybe it's a family member. I'm hearing for some, it may even be your child. You may even have an adult child or a teenage child that you're at odds with. I'm hearing, like, sit down, have a conversation and listen to understand and come up with, don't just do things so that you get what you want, but be willing to compromise, to let go of a little bit of what you want so that both parties in the situation can benefit, and so that both parties are walking away feeling heard, feeling understood, and feeling like we've come to a resolution where everyone can benefit from, right? But anyways, y'all, I have to go pick up some things, and I've said this like I don't know how many times. I like to get my errands done before the rest of the crowd gets out. I'm like I understand now why, they say like the early bird special, why, older people want to go out to breakfast at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Like, trust me, I understand. I want to get in, get what I need, and get out before anybody else shows up. So that's what I'm getting ready to do right now. And I may record something later on today once I finish my errands and got back home and gotten in my like relaxed mode. But anyways, that's just the message for today. Y'all, thank you for listening. Bye.